not going to tell you everything there is to know.
That's what the internet's for.
You're going to get in,
learn something,
and put it to work.
You're going to do it.
We'll respect your intelligence,
respect your time,
respect that you want to learn
what you need to do on the job.
Welcome to Eleventure. Higher learning at work.
As you develop your career, you'll probably find yourself in the midst of an application process more than once. Whether you're looking for a new job, applying for a college program, or hoping to win an award or scholarship, a strong letter of recommendation is a huge asset to almost any application. But the key word here is strong. It's important to know who to ask for a letter of recommendation to ensure you're getting the strongest recommendation possible. And once you've identified who you want to ask, it's also important to know how to ask them. Let's go over some strategies for choosing a recommender, determining what you need before you ask for a recommendation, establishing a timeline, and making the ask itself. And if you're not looking for a letter of recommendation right now, these guidelines will also help prepare you to get strong job references that you can provide to a potential employer in the future. Let's get started. The person who will write you a letter of recommendation is called your recommender. Choosing the right recommender can take some thought and needs to be done at least a month in advance of your deadline, so let's get right into it. In order to start creating a list of possible recommenders, we need to take a look at 3 things that make a strong recommendation. That way, you can start building your list of recommenders by evaluating which people can meet these criteria. So, what sets a strong recommendation apart from the rest? Number 1, a strong recommendation provides evidence of your past success in a role, position, or program, and conveys confidence that you will succeed in future roles. In other words, it illustrates someone's personal experience of what makes you great to work with and how you made a group, company, or project better. Think of people who might be able to give specific examples of moments where you showed certain behaviors, achieved something, or solved a problem that contributed to the success of the group. Number 2, it provides in-depth information about your skills or qualifications, including examples. Think of it this way. If you have a resume, maybe you have a list of some skills that you have developed throughout your internship, work, or education. Getting a letter of recommendation is an opportunity to have someone vouch for some of the skills, in particular using examples. So, if you were to provide someone with a list of qualifications you'd like them to highlight, if they're comfortable doing so, think about which people would be able to verify that you have those qualifications and that you have put them to use. And lastly, number 3, it is well written. A recommendation should be relatively free of grammatical errors and easy for the reader to understand. Okay, now that we know what goes into a good recommendation, let's start choosing recommenders. Think about bosses, mentors, colleagues, teachers, or professors, especially the ones you worked with often or developed a relationship with. Then write down those who could write you a strong recommendation. Remember, this means it gives evidence of your performance, provides in-depth information about your work, and is well written. For each person on your list, include notes about your relationship with them, any contact information you have, and any standout examples of projects that the person can talk about in their recommendation. It could also help to include a note to yourself about why this person came to mind as a potential recommender, or what about your relationship with them made them come to mind. Now that you have your list of potential recommenders, you're off to a great start. But letters of recommendation should be tailored to the specific position or program you're applying to. So let's look at 2 ways to narrow your list a little more so you can choose the best recommender for your current situation. First, revisit the list of desired skills or qualifications for the position or program you're applying for. Identify recommenders who can provide examples of times when they've seen you use some of the skills or qualifications. Those who can provide at least one strong and recent example of your most relevant skills should be moved to the top of your list. Then, once you've identified the people who have the best insight on the right skills and qualifications, narrow your list to people who know you on a more personal level. Choose people who can talk about your personality, what makes you fun to work with, or what makes you stand out from a crowd of people with similar skills and experience. Ideally, you'll be left with at least one person who can meet most of these criteria for you, But realistically, you won't always be able to find someone who meets them all, and that's okay. And keep in mind that a personal connection with you and insight on your professional experience are more important than your recommender's name recognition. Remember, a strong recommendation is more likely to come from someone who knows you well. Even though you just put all that work into narrowing down your list to find the best possible recommender for your situation, it's a good idea to keep the whole list of potential recommenders on hand. You may find that others on the list are better suited to help you out later on, or they could act as a contingency if another recommendation falls through. And now that you have the list of possible recommenders, keep in touch and maintain a relationship with as many of them as possible. They'll likely appreciate it. If they made it onto your list, they're probably invested in your journey anyway. Now that you know who you'd like to write your letter of recommendation, it's almost time to get in touch. But hang on. Before you send that email or make that phone call, keep in mind that asking for a letter of recommendation takes some preparation. There are deadlines to set, materials to gather, and other logistics to have in order first. Let's look at what you need to do before contacting a potential recommender. First, set an internal deadline that is 1 week before the official application deadline. An internal deadline is your own personal due date for all of your application materials. Your internal deadline is the one you will give to your recommender so you have time to review and finalize your application. Plus, it provides a bit of cushion if any of your recommenders are running behind. You should choose your recommender and be in touch with them at least a month before your internal deadline, so planning ahead is crucial. Remember that writing a letter of recommendation can take quite a bit of time. Plan ahead and ask early so you can respect your recommender's time and avoid receiving a rushed recommendation. Once you've set a realistic internal deadline, gather all the materials you want to have on hand for your recommender. They may ask for other documents too, but it's good to have the basics ready to go. For example, depending on what you're applying for, you might want to have some of the following on hand: an updated resume, a cover letter, CV, essays you've written for the application, or a synopsis of what you will write about, or a summary of the program or position. In general, round up any documents you have that can help your recommender speak to skills you have that are relevant to the position or program. This will help them strengthen your recommendation and make the process a little easier on them. Next, make a list of the things you want your recommender to highlight if they're comfortable doing so you can share it with them if they agree to your request. This will depend on your relationship with your recommender and the position or program you're applying to. For example, if you're applying for a community service internship, you might want to ask your recommender to highlight your volunteer experience. In that case, you provide the name of the place you volunteered, the work you did, and some specific ways the skills you showed there transfer to what you're applying for now. Now familiarize yourself with the logistics of how a recommendation should be submitted for this program or position. Certain programs will require your recommender to submit their letter directly to an online portal, while others will simply require your recommender to send you a copy of their letter. Make sure you know the correct way to submit, provide, or attach a letter of recommendation so that you can share these steps with your recommender and avoid any mishaps. Lastly, determine how you'll ask. It's best to ask in person, whether that's face-to-face or using a video call. If you can't ask in person, an email request is also appropriate. Your decision on this might be informed by your relationship with the recommender and your knowledge of their communication preferences. Keep in mind that it's never appropriate to list a recommender or reference on an application before you've gotten their consent to do so. Some applications might even notify your recommender when they've been added to your application, and if you haven't talked to them about it yet, that could make a bad impression or maybe even influence their decision. Taking these steps to prepare before asking for a letter of recommendation helps keep you on your timeline, helps your recommender know what's expected and needed, and makes it easy for your recommender to write a strong recommendation that can make your application stand out. When you've completed these steps, you're ready to start constructing your request. So you've chosen your recommender, you have all the materials you need, you've set your timeline, it's time to start getting in touch. Keep in mind that the best way to ask for a letter of recommendation is face-to-face, but an email is also appropriate. If you're able to ask your potential recommender in person and they agree to write you a recommendation, follow up with an email to thank them, reiterate your deadline in writing, and provide additional information or documents that they might need or want from you. If you choose to ask in an email, take your time with it and make sure it's proofread by you or someone you trust before you send it off. Whether you choose to ask in person or via email, the basic format you can use to structure your request is the same. Let's look at an example of an email request you might write to a boss you had while you were an intern if you wanted a recommendation for a potential job. First, the subject line. Don't make your intention a secret. The subject line should contain the words letter of recommendation and your name. Greet them by name at the top of the email, keeping in mind that the greeting you choose will depend on the formality of your relationship with this person. A colon here is considered more formal than a comma. Add whichever greeting feels right to you. Then, introduce yourself by outlining your relationship to the recommender. Speak genuinely and positively about the role or position you held. Make a clear connection between your relationship with the recommender and the position you're applying for. You want them to see the connection too. Ask clearly if they are willing to provide a strong letter of recommendation. Asking directly will help you confirm that you're on the same page and helps ensure that you get the results you're looking for. After you state your request, give some examples of topics they may want to discuss in their recommendation. Writing a letter of recommendation can be a significant undertaking, and you want to make it easy for them. You also want them to make you look as good as possible. Align these examples with the desired qualifications for the position you're applying for. This helps to ensure that you're asking your recommender to highlight skills or experiences that directly relate to those in the position description. This makes it easier for your recommender to give good, relevant examples. Next, reference any useful documents you've included and why you've included them. Keep in mind you can always send more later and that they haven't even said yes yet. Start with the basics and let them know you're prepared to share other documents they may want or need. As you start wrapping up your requests, provide your potential recommender with an out. You don't want someone to agree to write a recommendation because they couldn't see a way to say no. That's not a recipe for a strong recommendation. This is also a great time to let them know what your internal deadline is. Knowing when you need the letter by will help them make a decision about whether they can realistically provide you with a high-quality recommendation within your time frame. Before you wrap up your email or in-person conversation, remember to thank them. It's good form, and depending on how you phrase it, it can be used to signal that you are not making any assumptions about their willingness or ability to provide a recommendation. Frame it as a thank you for taking the time to think about your request. If it's framed as thanking them in advance for doing it, it might seem a little pushy. Lastly, sign off and send your request on its way. You've made your request. What happens next? Of course, it's ideal that your first choice recommender will agree to write your recommendation, but keep in mind that they could say no or maybe, and those are both okay. If they say no, it's probably not personal, and it's better to find the recommender who can commit the time and attention to writing a strong recommendation. People have a lot on their plates. Don't get discouraged. If they say maybe, it could be a good idea to politely let them off the hook and contact another potential recommender right away. For example, if your first pick says they can write one, but they aren't sure they can write a strong one, maybe because they don't feel they know you well enough or they aren't sure how much time they'll have, then you want to find someone who can. And keep in mind that if you make your request via email and don't hear back after about a week, you may want to reach out to the next person on your list. If your first choice does get in touch with you after you've already set something up with another recommender, just thank them and let them know that you're covered. Even when recommenders do accept, it's always good to have a contingency plan in case a recommendation falls through or isn't completed on time. Choose one or two backup recommenders early on and keep them in the back of your mind. You should also set reminders to check in with your recommender. If your internal deadline is approaching and a recommendation hasn't been submitted, it's time to follow up. Politely check in on their progress, ask if they have any questions, and get confirmation that they'll be able to meet the deadline. If you're having trouble getting in touch with them and your deadline is within a couple of weeks, it's time to get in touch with your backup recommender. The guidelines for contacting this recommender are the same as the ones you would have followed for your first recommender, except you'll need to explain the urgency of your situation and perhaps give them some wiggle room on your internal deadline. Talk to them in person if you can. Provide them with the information they need, and if they agree, remember to thank them for helping you out on such short notice. Once you obtain and submit your recommendation, it's time to take a breath. Your recommendation is in and your application is complete. Congratulations! Now it's time to thank your recommender again. A handwritten card expressing your appreciation is a great way to say thank you. It shows that you value their time and your relationship with them. Then, keep your recommender updated on whether or not your application is successful. They're invested in your journey, and they want to hear either way. It's also a great way to make sure you're keeping the lines of communication open in case you need another recommendation in the future. You did it! You got your letter of recommendation. Whatever the results of your application may be, you've already accomplished something by going through these steps. Navigating the processes of choosing the best recommender, organizing everything you need before you contact them, getting in touch with them, and keeping them in the loop can all help you level up on some professional skills. And it doesn't have to end here. As you continue on your professional journey, remember that continuing to cultivate these kind of relationships can provide you with opportunities to receive or provide mentorship, insight, advice, references, and yes, letters of recommendation in the future. Good luck! Thank you for joining us here at Eleventure. Higher learning at work.